York State Coalition Against Domestic Violence, and these are all their websites, the National Center on Domestic Violence, Trauma, and Mental Health. The Erie County Coalition, if you're interested, you can even come to one of our monthly meetings, which is usually on the second Friday of the month. And then the program I run is the New York Model for Better programs, and that's our website. We do training around the country for that. And I'd like to give you a little bit of time around any particular questions that you have around what I've said so far. Any questions? Yes?
Why do you think that it is easier for a male to batter his spouse or partner and not be accountable for his actions, rather than when he goes out and he beats someone up in the parking lot?
Sure. What makes me say that, and I don't have the statistics here, but if a man goes into the park, beats up a stranger, and is arrested, he will go to court, and the courts are really consistent in terms of applying criminal sanctions to his case for that. We can all pretty much bet that he's going to go to jail for that offense, or at least to have something extremely serious imposed to him. When we look at men who are coming before the criminal justice system for abusing their partner, whether that's their wife or their girlfriend, in an intimate relationship, courts are pretty inconsistent. And we have the statistics in the criminal, like the Department of Justice has the statistics that at the same rate, cases that come before the criminal justice courts for acts of domestic violence are not having sanctions imposed in the same way, or as seriously in the same way they are for stranger violence. Men are getting off left and right.
Well,
so
why do you think that is? I mean, it's almost like women are second-class citizens if they are being abused by their spouse.
Absolutely.
Or their...
and I'm glad you asked that again, because I think if you look at our court system, who doesn't treat it as seriously, our court system is run by men. It's a men's institution. And I think despite all the attempts that the court system tries not to be impartial, I think in many ways is, and doesn't realize it. So I think the courts have not treated it as seriously because of it's a men's institution. And I think institutions still become a product of our culture, a product of our society. I mean, they're run by human beings, you know? And we can be doing sexist things and not realizing it. I think it's very easy for that to happen. And I know some judicial committees that I have sat on over the years have experienced that same thing, you know? Sexist things that, or decisions that get made that still continue to compromise women. So thank you for asking. It was a good question. Yes?
Why do the male species feel that they're more dominant than the female species, and we proved them wrong around the Great Depression when they had to go to war and they were all drafted out, and we proved them wrong to them that we were able to do everything they were able to do?
Good point. I think still, if you look at that phrase that I used, king of his castle, we all know the phrase. People still use it. I think people still think and believe, in many ways, not everybody, that men have privileges that women do not. Like in the history of our country, even though it was after kind of the war, the Civil War, you said, right?
No,
It was the Depression, right. I think it was in the 60s, maybe late 60s, where men could get credit cards. Yes, women could not. A colleague of mine tells this story that her and her husband, he had a credit card, but she could not get a credit card. I think that's an example of how our, even the business structure that we have is kind of driven by this sexist thinking in the policies they've created, around allowing the man to have a credit card and his wife to not.
But then you have to say your government is corrupt because, and when our amendment, I think it was like the 19th one or the 20th one, women get rights.
Right.
Meaning that, what I'm saying is that, one main reason why men do what they do to women is because it's pursued in the media. They don't try to make it better in the media. They let them go by calling these and hoes. And
Right.
they have movies pursuing that and persuading that, and they have movies persuading women to back down and not stand up for themselves. They don't have no movies out there that's persuading a woman to be strong in that or to show that they're much better than just a loud person.
Yeah.
So that they give life. Women give life. Men only produce it to make life.
Right, right. I think it's still a problem. It's still part of our culture that allows this inequality, you know, despite it's supposed to be equal, it's not. I think of the reality. I think what you're describing is reality. Somebody else had a question?
I did. My concern is that if men do go to jail for their crimes against women, that they could become more violent in jail, and when they get out, they could just actually go and kill the woman, you know.
Absolutely.
And
It's a
I'm
great
concerned
point.
about
Yep.
that maybe they need to be shown how not to be a violent man. They need to learn to abhor violence.
Right. Yes, absolutely. But what we've learned over the years is that men who are violent, they know how to be violent and they know how to not be violent. You know, it's not a skill deficit. You had a question?
Do you think that possibly we as a society condone violence or violent tendency behavior by our development of young people as they grow up? And in particular, if you even deal with harassment or how children are allowed to needle each other, the expectation that you will always be the best, you're entitled to certain things, and maybe that leads to their perception that they have the right to use forces that are inappropriate in moments when they need to sit down and shut up.
Well said. Other questions? Okay, well, thank you very much for your time.